and welcome to Truth Trial, a show where you get to hear both sides of the issue and you get to form your own opinion. No brainwash, no bias, no rhetoric, just the truth. I'm Brooke Solis, and you're watching Truth Trial.
While protests rage around the U.S., one burning question remains. Should we build the wall that President Trump wants? Tonight, infamous political lightning rod Roger Stone argues for the wall against a fiery ex-Marine who thinks it's a terrible idea. Don't miss this battle. But first, you'll hear from one activist who says that you're safer with sensible gun laws, while another zealot passionately argues that gun laws will leave you painfully vulnerable to criminals. Who's right? Andrea Brower is executive director of Texas Gun Sense, an organization working to reduce gun violence by promoting gun laws. Squaring off against her is Murdoch Pisgatti, founder of Come and Take It Texas, a group focused on Second Amendment gun rights. You'll hear both sides, and you'll get to add your opinion on this edition of Truth Trial.
Most of, if not all of these mass shootings have been in gun-free zones. They're places they put up a sign and say, any law-abiding citizen, don't carry your gun here. Obviously, the bad guy is going to walk right past the sign. The sign does not stop a person from walking in there with a gun. So what you've done is disarmed people and you've put them in a very dangerous situation. It's just a shooting gallery, just waiting for these bad guys to come in and take advantage of a disarmed population.
The argument always goes to, this is a slippery slope, they want to take away our guns, they want confiscation, they want a full-on ban, and that is simply not the case. And it's really frustrating because it impedes us from making any progress in addressing the gun violence problem in our country, because the gun right groups refuse to come to the table and have any type of compromise on this issue.
You know, a big part of this is not about gun control, it's about control. And it goes across the board. Anytime that you're putting regulations on law-abiding citizens, it's just that you're making the good people, making it harder for the good people to defend themselves in any situation.
The NRA is too strong, too big, too powerful, and they're out of step with the American people.
Hello and welcome to Truth Trial, where we put important issues of the day on trial so you can decide the truth. Does it seem harder to wade through all that spin to figure out the truth? You've heard of the court of public opinion? Well, this is it. Our question tonight is, after this recent mass shooting, do we need more gun control laws? Joining us today is Andrea Brower, Executive Director of Texas Gun Sense, a nonprofit organization promoting effective gun laws. And here is Murdoch Pisgatti, the founder of Come and Take It Texas, which focuses on preserving constitutional protections. And so now, Andrea, we will hear from you and let the debate begin, because this is Truth Trial.
We have a gun violence problem in this country. There are 33,000 gun deaths every year, and that is children, teen suicide victims, mothers, fathers, breadwinners, victims of domestic violence, and it tears families apart. We also have a homicide rate that is 7 times higher than that of other high-income countries. It's a public health problem that has enormous societal and economic costs. And the problem is that the conversation is typically on gun rights instead of public safety. And this is despite the fact that most people in the United States believe that we should have stronger laws such as comprehensive background checks, higher standards for legal gun ownership, and greater accountability for gun dealers. Another problem that we have is that our leaders are not voting as their constituents would like them to do. The gun lobby and the NRA have changed the narrative and have changed from their roots away from a safety organization to being a lobbying organization that digs their heels in and will not allow for any common sense steps forward. The truth is the Second Amendment is not at risk. It's not under attack. It's alive and well and will be it will always be in our country. We need to stop being so polarized on this issue. We need to come together and try to find common ground on this issue that we can start working on the problem that exists. I don't know of any other problem in our country that we just essentially ignore like this. Motor vehicle deaths is one thing. We have in the 30,000 numbers of motor vehicle deaths every year, and we have enormous amounts of resources put on that. So we need to come together and try to work towards solving this problem.
What you're going to hear today is from my opponent is a lot of emotional fiction. They talk about statistics of how many times an inanimate object kills someone. But in 2008, out of the 5.3 million violent crimes that were committed, only 8% of them were actually done with handguns. So we're talking a very small percentage of the violent crimes that happen in America are with guns. It's really not about gun control, it's about control. And Judge Napolitano said it best that the Second Amendment right to own guns is not about hunting, it's about the ability to shoot back at your government when they become tyrannical. These gun sense people want to use the force and violence of the state to enforce their opinions on you and make you live how they see fit, which is to be defenseless against any attacker, to defend yourself with yourself or any loved ones. It's a true democracy or mob rule where people get to tell you how to live. It's not the republic for which the founding fathers intended this country to be. These are unalienable rights that you should not be able to put a lien upon. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed, and all of these regulations that they are putting forth as requirements are that infringement that it talks about in that Constitution. These mass shootings that happen are in gun-free zones. These are the examples of areas where these regulations are most stringent and put into place. And that's where we see this violence happening. The criminal's not going to obey the law. These laws and regulations are not for the bad guy. They're for you.
This is not an emotional argument. This is a fact-based argument. 33,000 gun deaths a year is not emotional. The gun violence prevention groups like ours are not trying to take away rights. We're trying to protect people. We want to see lives saved. And I understand that may be some of what you would like to do too. I'm sure that you hate to see deaths, but this is a public health issue. And the facts show that if a lot of these people did not have access to the guns, the murder or the suicide or the accident surely wouldn't have happened. Now, the Second Amendment also calls for a well-regulated militia, and the Supreme and regulated being the key word. The Supreme Court has affirmed again and again through the last century that sensible regulations are in line and do not violate the Second Amendment, and that is all we're calling for. We are not calling for people to not have the right to defend themselves. We support a law-abiding citizen's right to defend themselves. And to clear up a fact, most of those gun deaths do not take place in gun-free zones. Most of those deaths take place in people's homes because suicides are 60% of all gun deaths in America. I will also say that the idea that my opponent raised about violence against the government is uncalled for. It's unnecessary and it's unlawful. We are against gun violence. We're against all violence, but our organizations are specifically for gun violence prevention. We believe in law enforcement. We back law enforcement, and we partner with law enforcement, and we think they are the ones to take care of the problems, and it is not up to individual gun owners to be vigilantes and solve all of our public health crises and crime in this country. And any promotion of that is frankly irresponsible.
I'm pretty certain the Second Amendment starts with that a well-regulated militia in one part and then denotes that the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. Specifically speaking of the people, and we are the people, so we do have that right. Violence against a tyrannical government is the reason that was put in there. There was a little problem that we had with England, and so we were sure to put that in there so that we could ensure the ability to fight back against the government. And so that is what our country is founded on. The access to guns, outlawing them does not get rid of that. I'm fairly certain that people are still have access to methamphetamines. They still have access to heroin. There's a lot of statistics that prove that when you outlaw something like heroin, it becomes more dangerous because, for one thing, now it's being manufactured in an unregulated area, and it forces people to go underground and purchase these things and put themselves in dangerous situations. A lot of the crime that is happening is because people cannot buy things legally. The regulations are only focusing on the law-abiding citizen that frankly doesn't need the regulation in the first place. And what are these stipulations on what you're regulating? On what basis? Is it because they're taking medical marijuana for medical reasons? Post-mortem depression in your file for after your first child? Any number of medical issues could keep you from owning a handgun and being able to protect yourself when you need it. And these lists are ever expanding. And Obama, with his demand to put the no-fly list as a no-buy list for the guns, is a reason that this was very plain as shall not be infringed. Because this no-fly list, let me take a second to describe what is on this no-fly list. There's nothing saying how we get on it. There's nothing saying how we get off of it. It's completely outside of law, and we're using that as a legal means to keep people from defending themselves. This is what democracy looks like, and this is not what the founding fathers had in mind. You know who someone who would have been have been categorized as a mental illness? It would have been our founding fathers, because they had this crazy idea that England shouldn't be ruling over them. They thought taxation was theft.
Well, the good news is mental health is not just somebody that takes an antidepressant. Mental health is described in federal law as somebody that is involuntarily committed to an institution or someone has been adjudicated as mentally incompetent. That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about just the average person. And you said—
Well, some states have actually put those regulations in place to where if you're just denoted as having a depression, that gun right is taken from you.
No, I don't think there's any state that has if you have depression. I think that's false.
Okay.
Now, if you once again talked about outlawing guns. Never once has my organization or the gun violence prevention organizations, at least the big ones, talked about outlawing guns. And that's the shame of this, is why do we have to go to that place? I already said any law-abiding citizen should have the right to bear arms, and I mean that, and I am sincere. And that's the problem. That's why we can't make any progress on this issue, is because it goes to outlawing, and that's not what I said at all. In fact, you said that our regulations would infringe on law-abiding citizens' rights, and that's not what we're talking about. A background check does not infringe on a law-abiding citizen's rights. If you take the background check, if you pass it, and you're a law-abiding citizen, you will get your gun within minutes. It keeps away the 7 categories that the federal government has said are prohibited people: felons, drug addicts, people that have dangerous mental illnesses, people that most people would say shouldn't have guns. And I would say that, I don't know if you believe in background checks or not. We believe them. They work. They've stopped 1.2 million people from buying guns since 1998. It's in the best interest of public safety.
They stopped them from buying them legally.
Yes, and certainly there is a black market.
Obviously, if you've ever been on the dark web, you can buy anything you would like, whether it's legal or not.
Well,
it doesn't stop a person who has an intent to harm someone from going and buying a firearm. And even if they don't have access to the firearm, there's people that use vehicles to run through crowds. Last month in Japan, there was a mass suicide with a knife. He was able to stab 45 people before they stopped him with a knife. They're starting to regulate knives in countries where they have guns banned. There is a never-ending slippery slope to this. It just keeps going, and they want to keep infringing on your rights to defend yourself.
The slippery slope argument is dangerous to public safety. It's a tired argument that it's just not based in reality. That our gun violence prevention groups, it's a slippery slope to confiscation. We're going to knock on everybody's door and take their guns. It's not true. It's not based in fact. Just wanting to have a background check is not taking away your gun. What should the fear be? Should a person that wants to legally, and most people agree with it, in polls, gun owners agree that they should have a background check. That is, the majority of gun owners do, because if that's the price we have to pay for terrible mass shootings and gun deaths around the world to get their right, then it's not infringing. So we think it's sensible and it's reasonable, and they should be in all 50 states.
Well, it's very sensible to have your town, like Chicago, get the most stringent regulations and become the most dangerous. I don't think that you would walk around in South Chicago after dark. And they have the strongest gun regulations, one of the strongest in the country. Every time we see these regulations get put into place, these people are still buying guns, they're still getting their hands on them, and they're putting themselves in more dangerous situations because it's an illegal activity.
Well, there will always be problems, and as you say, people will get guns through the black market. Criminals will get guns. I absolutely agree with you. We can't eradicate this problem, but we also don't throw. In my view, we don't throw
So
our
you're
hands
not
up in
getting the
the air.
guns out of the criminals' hands by putting these regulations in place.
We don't believe in throwing out any regulations and saying, well, they'll get them anyway. I mean, for that matter, would we use that logic for anything else? Well, gun laws don't work, so let's just make cocaine and heroin legal for everybody because people are getting them on the black market. Where does the
Well, they should.
argument? Okay, well, that's not my view, and I don't think that's the best interest of public safety, and I don't think most people agree with that. But I think that there is a reasonableness that most people agree with, and frankly, I think you're out of step with what most Americans believe in.
Yeah. Well, there's this thing about true freedom and owning your own body and regulating what you put in your own body and how you're able to defend yourself. And these regulations and these laws stop that. They act as if they own your body. And that should not be the way that we run a country.
How does a background check act as if I own your body?
It's another person saying that they have the right to keep you from defending yourself how you see fit.
We live in the United States of America. The Second Amendment has reasonable regulations attached to it, and it's perfectly it's not infringing on your body. It's our country.
It says
it's
the
our
militia
government.
should be regulated, and it says the people's right should not be infringed.
The Heller Agreement in 2008, and this is a conservative court that said that reasonable regulations in states can be, so that is background
people
checks.
enacting control.
Well, I mean, frankly, it seems like you're against any government or any control and anarchy. And again, it's a view you're certainly entitled to. I think it is out of step with what most people believe. I don't think, as I say, we do respect a gun owner's right to bear arms. We do not think we're infringing with reasonable regulations.
But just because you don't think you're infringing doesn't mean that isn't the case.
We have studies that show that it does indeed stop crime. I, in fact, have that shows that states with stronger gun laws have lower gun death rates. States with weak laws have the highest death rates in the country. Alaska, Montana, Mississippi, Alabama. Hey, all we're looking for is reasonable gun laws that will also allow law-abiding citizens to keep and bear arms.
All right, well, I'm going to cut you guys off there. That was a great debate. Thank you so much for taking part in there. We're going to go to a break, and then we'll come back with closing arguments from both. Welcome back to Truth Trial. And now we continue with closing arguments with Andrea Brower, Executive Director of Texas Gun Sense. Andrea?
Well, it's been an interesting discussion today, but unfortunately it's been one that's been dominated by fear from my opponent, fear about non-existent proposals from the gun violence prevention advocates, and fear about a tyrannical government coming to take their guns away. And that is just not the reality of what is happening today. The truth is that the Second Amendment is well embedded in our Constitution, and it is not going away, and gun owners will continue to enjoy their right to bear arms if they're a law-abiding citizen. The Second Amendment also does call for well-regulated militia or regulation, which has been upheld time and time again through the Supreme Court. The problem is that well-regulated environment does not exist today, and the problem with that is that it's causing 33,000 deaths a year, and we need to fix that problem. Every day in the United States, people are going and purchasing guns, people that are domestic abusers, felons, people that have dangerous mental illnesses and are high risk from harming themselves or others, are buying guns over the internet, are buying guns at gun shows from unlicensed dealers because our laws allow for this. They're meeting up in McDonald's parking lots and purchasing guns with no identification, with no background check, and this is not in the interest of public safety. Gun violence activists like myself just want to stop the senseless deaths and try to save lives. There are proven solutions that we can enact that won't infringe on gun rights, and those are to have comprehensive background checks, to have lethal violence order protection that will help families with high risk family members with mental illness to not access a gun, to have state laws that work for better enforcement, to have even public education and awareness campaigns about safe storage, because too many people are not storing their guns safely, are recognizing the risk of suicide in their loved ones, and they're not locking up their guns properly. Every day we're hearing about toddlers shooting people. I think that there are more toddlers that have shot people in the U.S. than terrorists shooting people in this country, and that's a tragedy, and we need to fix the problem. We can work together. I truly believe that we can work together if our Congress and our legislators have the will to do so, have the will to enact proposals and policies and laws that better reflect the interests of the majority of the people of the United States that want better public safety and don't want to be scared when they go to a movie theater or when their child goes to school. So I welcome any conversation from any state group or national group to try to work on this problem together so that we can have a safer America.
You know, the question that we started with was, in mass shootings, should these regulations be strengthened to prevent them? And I don't see where a background check would have prevented any of these recent mass shootings. Most of the people have passed the background checks that are in place. Some of them were soldiers on base. This is a mental illness issue. It's an education issue. I think we could agree on strengthening in education. If you want to give away free classes that are not mandatory, I could abide by that. But causing people to buy illegal guns will exacerbate the violence issue and cause people to put themselves in dangerous situations. Whenever you stop a soldier coming back from Iraq from getting help because his PTSD will prevent him from buying a gun, you're causing more issues in the mental health field because people aren't getting the help that they need. People like Art Acevedo said that he would rather a woman be unarmed and be raped than to be armed on campus. And these are the type of people that are for these regulations. These people that want to control your life, they want to tell you how you can defend yourself and your loved ones. The unalienable right of the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, wasn't given to us by the Second Amendment. It was a natural right that we had beforehand. The Second Amendment is only warning the government to not infringe on that right. All of these regulations are that infringement that we have been talking about today. And buying guns in a McDonald's parking lot, I believe, is exactly what people will do when you strengthen the gun regulations. That's not prevented by having a background check. These things happen regardless. And for the most part, again, it makes it a dangerous situation. All mass shootings are in gun-free zones, and these are the places that guns are most highly regulated. I think that we need to arm more people to make it safer, not take more guns away.
Well, thank you very much, Murdoch. Thank you very much, Andrea, as well. You have given us a lot to think about, including the audience at home. And if you are at home and you would like to get involved in this conversation, then please go to truthtrial.com or text the number that is on your screen, and that you can get involved in voting to see what your truth is for you. I'm Marcus Lloyd, and this has been Truth Trial. Who won the debate, do you think?
It really depends on your viewpoint. Are you for personal freedom or are you for statism?
So you don't know who won? I mean, you just...
If you're for personal freedom, then I won, apparently, because that's what our ultimate goal here is personal freedom, having the right to defend yourself.
Yeah, I think they're trying to categorize us as being, the argument always goes to, this is a slippery slope, they want to take away our guns, they want confiscation, they want a full-on ban, and that is simply not the case, and it's really frustrating because it impedes us from making any progress in addressing the gun violence problem in our country because the gun right groups refuse to come to the table and have any type of compromise on this issue. I work with law enforcement, I work with mental health, I work with a variety of other organizations, and they all say, "Hey, we're against gun violence." I mean, most people are against gun violence,
Sure.
right? And we would hope, and there's sort of lip service to the gun rights groups about, yes, we're against gun violence, but when we have reasonable proposals that we bring forward and that would not infringe on a person's Second Amendment rights, we're shut down.
It's really a tail wagging the dog situation where the people that are trying to push for no guns whatsoever are running a narrative that these guns are bad and that regulating them somehow makes us safer, when in turn making it harder for good law-abiding citizens to own these guns makes them more susceptible to the bad people that are out there.
We don't think eliminating gun-free zones will increase or reduce crime. I think the thinking there is that you will get, that the shooters are targeting these gun-free zones and going in because they know somebody will not attack them or have a gun to defend them. But, that's that getting into the good guy with a gun theory, which is largely disproven. If less than 5% of Americans have concealed handgun licenses, the chance that somebody's going to be there to take out a shooter anyway is minuscule. So, I think that we still need to continue to regulate and have gun-free zones. I think they serve a purpose.
Go to truthtrial.com or text the number on your screen to vote for the winner of the debate.
We'll be right back after these messages.
That's all the time we have. Go to truthtrial.com or text the number on your screen to vote for the winner of the debate. Tune in next time for the results of the poll and for the next episode of Truth Trial. Got a great show idea for Truth Trial? We want your ideas. Submit your show ideas or tell us about your expertise on an important topic. We are on the lookout for credible, informed, and dynamic guests. Contact us now at www.truthtrialguestinfo.com. Join us at www.truthtrial.com every week to examine high-impact issues that affect your life. Do you know the facts? The real facts. Watch extended versions of our previous and current debates. Get an in-depth understanding, with both sides presented, of issues that directly impact you. Watch these one-on-one interviews up close with our host. You can also watch full shows of Truth Trial on our website anytime and cast your vote for the winner.